Good morning, everyone. This is the morning meeting, and we're so happy to have you to this very special episode of the morning meeting with lots of moving pieces, different than usual. Sean, you see there, can only stay briefly. Sean, tell us why you need to go pretty soon.
I am getting sworn back onto the board of the U.S. Naval Academy, so you are looking live at the Severn River
Yeah, they say
here
you
in.
can't. They say you can't go home again. They say there are no second acts in American politics. They say you only get one chance to make a first impression. All wrong. As on this historic day, Sean goes back on the board there. At some point, Sean will step out, and someone, maybe Joy Phillips, one of you will become the guest co-host. One of the early thoughts we had at Two Way was to have a competition called America's Great Next Political Pundit, and we're gonna have a national competition where everybody comes on and does their punditry, and there's judges and voting, and just like American Idol, and then eventually one of you gets your own show or part of a show. This is kind of a dry run for that because we had a long list of things we've never gotten to. That's one of them. But today could be the day. So if you'd like to be the guest host filling Sean's seat, so don't raise your hand if you're a Democrat. Raise your hand. And right now, Joy's the front runner for reasons those of you who are at the pregame show will know. I'll run through the day book. Then Sean, Dan, and I will kick things around. Sean will tag out someone, maybe Joy will come in. Guest host will do the normal format. And at the end of the program, we'll be joined by Meghan McCain, whose program on the two-way platform is getting a new name and a new time slot, which we'll tell you about at the end of today's show. We also have a great little video package from Mike Lawler. Did a town hall last night. You won't want to miss that. Mike Lawler, of course, guest hosted on Friday, and that was a raucous and kind of unruly experience. Wait till you see what happened at his town hall. That's what we call a tease. Now, today, the White House pool includes Sinclair and Zero Hedge. Not really any news there. We've gotten used to Zero Hedge being in the pool. So there's the pool. The president's got I would call a crazy quilt, wacky schedule today. 1 o'clock delivers a sports announcement. Axios broke the story. He's announcing that the NFL draft, which has become a big thing as it moves around from city to city every year, will be in Washington next year. He
And
signs
did you see
exec
where? On the
On the
mall.
on the mall.
mall.
On the mall. Yes.
Yeah.
Green Bay somehow fits 600,000 people. I can only imagine how many people will come if it's on the mall. Maybe not that many, but a lot.
Oh,
3 o'clock, president signs executive orders, close press. 3:30, he welcomes home a returned citizen. Don't know who that is. Also listed as closed press. And then he goes to his golf club across the river, Trump National, where he attends a MAGA Inc. dinner, which is like a what do you call it? A crypto thing that he and
crypto.
David Sachs are hosting with an enormous price tag. All right, don't know what the vice president's doing. Scott Bessent, 11 Eastern, speaks at the Milken Institute conference in Beverly Hills. You can get a link to watch that live in my Substack. At the exact same time, at the exact same conference, uh, Jill Biden is speaking. Not sure what she's going to talk about, but I'll be featuring both of those on Two Way tonight. You can count on that. And the Bidens are on The View. Both Bidens are on The View later this week. Congress back in session. The House is trying to figure out how to deal with reconciliation. The House is also in rules today dealing with the important matter of renaming the Gulf of to the Gulf of separate party leadership meetings in both the House and the Senate tonight. And at 3:30, Chuck Schumer holds a media availability with small business owners. It's the right concept. We all agree. Real lives of real people. Let's see how much coverage the cynical Capitol Hill press corps gives Chuck Schumer appearing with real people. Premier Xi, later in the week, in 2 days, is spending, according to what I read this morning, 2 or 3 days in Russia to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the defeat of the Nazis. So that'll be Xi and Putin together. We'll all watch that closely. Finally, tonight, I think at 5 o'clock, is the deadline for the government to respond to all the questions that have been posed by Obrego Garcia's attorneys. And there are many of them, and we'll see what happens. All right, guys, lots to get to. Sean, rapid round here. Tell me your current sense of play on the following issue: China, trade.
Very positive. I think the way that the Chinese have expressed concern about their economy, them putting out that olive branch to a meeting, I will say it again, expect a meeting in China somewhere end of July. But I think this was positive for everybody who said, Trump, what's he doing, whatever, and the Chinese won't cower. They are starting to cower. They realize the impact of what's happening. They're already talking about carve outs for certain things. So this is a big, I don't think the president will get credit that he deserves for this, but China is coming to him now.
Dan.
It's mutually assured destruction. They both want a deal. China's doing carve outs. We're doing carve outs. What did China float this weekend? they might be willing to work with us on fentanyl. I don't believe that's why we did this whole thing, but it's a good start.
I mostly agree with Sean, except I think the summit won't be in China. Russia, the only development I saw of significance was that the U.S. is sending some air defense system to Ukraine.
Yep.
A little bit surprising to those of us who thought those days were done. Sean, where are we on Ukraine, Russia?
But I think, again, people are underestimating. Once again, Trump's got his tactics. They might not be normal, but they're getting results. And on Ukraine, we're moving closer to everybody who's been concerned about them. This is, again, moving closer to Ukraine, putting Putin in a box. Win-win for Trump, 2 for 2.
Dan, Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah, it's an encouraging sign that as Putin drags his feet, we're now stepping up to start to move some pretty sophisticated weaponry to Ukraine.
Okay. Amazing this morning. The Israeli government basically announced that they're going to take control of all of Gaza. Had that occurred 6 months ago, a year ago, would have been the biggest story in the world. It's barely getting any coverage. Sean.
Again, it's funny, to your point, it's the lack of coverage in all 3 of these stories. It's amazing. If it doesn't favor the chaos that they want to describe, they ignore the story.
Dan?
I think this is the definition of chaos, because one of the sub parts of this story is the Houthis fired at the main airport in Israel. And I thought that Pete Hegseth took out the Houthis, which apparently they did not. And that's been in the news a lot recently. Israel spiraling in the other direction. So I'm not sure what Trump's play is, and I'm not sure there's a good answer.
The Houthi attack near the airport in Israel is a huge story in Israel. Yep. Most of their commercial flights were canceled, and again, not getting a lot of coverage. What is getting a lot of coverage? Well, I'll show you. The president wants to open Alcatraz and make it a Supermax. You can put that up, Paul. He on Truth Social last night, he said, we need more prison space, and so why not open Alcatraz? Well, for one thing, it's a tourist attraction now. It's not really equipped in the least to be a maximum security prison. It would take a lot of money and a lot of time. But that got more coverage. I sampled, as Sean does, a lot of morning television, and that got more coverage than the first stories we talked about. What else is getting coverage? The president put this up, wants to put 100% tariffs on movies made overseas. Very complicated to do this for a variety of reasons, just like reopening Alcatraz. The question of where a movie is made in this day and age is a little hard to tell, but that's getting coverage. And then, of course, the president's 3-time going to the well, let them eat cake. Little girls should only own the number of dolls the government specifies. If a Democrat said this, I shudder to think what MAGA would say. The president said it last week, said it with Kristen Welker, and here he is again, talking to the media yesterday, once again saying, you may only own the number of dolls I tell you to. Roll that, please.
All I'm saying is that a young lady, a 10-year-old girl, 9-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl doesn't need 37 dolls. She could be very happy with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I would. Let's not waste a lot of time on this stupid question. What else?
Sean, I get the distractions. I get the fact that he's got a peripatetic mind. But why does the president keep saying that it's up to him how many dolls someone can own?
Well, all I'll say is I'm glad my daughter is 14 because she was a big fan of dolls, teddy bears, etc. So look, he used the analogy once and then he continues to do it. I think pivoting and moving on is probably the right thing because it was an example used once to talk about the impact of tariffs they would have. I'm not sure that was the best way to crystallize the impact that tariffs might have, especially because of the impact it has on.
If you were press secretary or comms director for the RNC, and a Democratic president said, my policies might lead to higher prices for dolls and less availability, but you know what? Girls should have fewer dolls. They should be fine with fewer dolls. You would go crazy, wouldn't you?
Sure, but again, there's certain things that both parties can get away with. Each party plays to its strength and its weakness. So yes, we would have probably made a big deal out of that. I think Democrats are in a bind, and that's why you're not seeing the pushback. It's the media that's doing the pushback, not the Democrats in an effective way.
Chuck Schumer shouldn't be doing an event with small business owners. He should be doing an event with a little girl with 10 dolls. Dan.
I mean, I was just going to say, this is where, as a Democrat, I look at Trump when he went to work at McDonald's, got in the garbage truck. Like, he's great at taking a moment like this and flipping it into some sort of like symbolic, thing that drives social media that like everyone is talking about. Chuck Schumer, Mark, put a letter out. right? Like saying that we have concerns about it. I mean, look, he is the ultimate red ball distractor. I even thought in that statement on Air Force One, he caught himself. Like, I think he knew immediately, oops, I said this again, because he's like, all right, that's a stupid question.
Right.
Next topic, right? Like, to me, it was like the little wheel saying, oh shit, I stepped in it.
But I will say this. To your point, Mark, and what Dan's saying, it's unbelievable how ineffective the Democrats are at messaging right now. The idea that they have the wrong person doing the wrong thing speaks volumes about the leadership that they have. This should be an easy layup of a press conference or a press event that they're just flailing at. And I guarantee you by like Friday, after we've talked about this, they'll put something out 5 days too late.
I totally agree with you. The press is talking about it. We're talking about it. I've not heard a single Democrat. I haven't.
But you
seen
know
it
what? There's
on social media. Like,
I
it's
think part of the
crazy.
problem is
It's crazy what the president's saying.
I will tell you this though.
Fox is the partying. Yep.
There's a what's his name? Rob Flaherty. Is that his name? The deputy campaign manager for
for
yeah.
Kamala. Yep.
I tweeted out he had a great op-ed this weekend.
Great
of all places,
op-ed.
the
Great.
New York Times. I tweeted it out, but this is exactly what he was talking about. Where there's like they use the wrong mediums to talk about the wrong things with the wrong people, and this is their fundamental problem right now. I mean, it was amazing to hear him say it. It's kind of funny. He took that message to the New York Times. There's a bit of irony in there, but I understand why he did it.
Well, and he said he noted the irony in the piece that he was writing it. He was writing it in the place he doesn't think Democrats should be. All right. Again, if you want to be Sean's substitute coming up in a matter of moments, please raise your hand. X state. If you look at what's going on with the House grappling with reconciliation, and again, the Senate Republican senators keep saying if the House screws this up, we're going to step in. But the action is still in the House. You have a marker down that's a little opaque, but basically, the moderates think there are too many cuts, particularly on Medicaid. The conservatives, the hawks, think there's too little. We all think the mantra "failure is not an option" will be what determines things in the end. But for now, they're having trouble, and it looks like the deadline is about to slip. The deadline's in part about to slip because there is no deadline except the rhetorical one. We all expect that the X date, the date when the government breaches the debt ceiling, is going to focus the minds and provide the real forcing mechanism. It was supposed to be announced last week, and I asked around on Friday and this morning. I can't get anybody to tell me when it's coming. Sean, why is the Treasury Secretary playing hide the ball with the X date?
Well, because he understands exactly what we're talking about. And first of all, I don't know that he's playing hide the ball. If he doesn't have anything to announce yet, it's not hiding the ball. But I will say that because they understand that X date is going to drive so much of what we're talking about. It's going to drive the need to do the debt ceiling, and you've got reconciliation happening. So they understand you make one announcement on this date, everything else starts to fall into place real quickly, and not in a way that you want it to. That drives your timeline in a way that you probably don't want to.
Dan, where's the X date?
I mean, we don't know, and I think that's exactly it. I think they do know. They just don't want to put it out there until they feel like the plane has a good, landing path to the runway. And they did punt this week. 3 committees were supposed to start marking up. They've canceled it for this week.
Well,
and
3 of the committees, 3 of them.
Yeah, but the three with the bulk of the
jurisdiction. The 3 that have 90% of it. And so I think they know, but they're not going to say until it's the right time for them.
Sean, how you doing on time, Sean?
Well, I'm kind of trying to see if I'm getting the high side, but I'm going to use this opportunity to tap out right now because I don't need to keep. I worked hard to get back to this position, and I don't want to blow the.
All right. Well, send us some photos, and if you can do live coverage, just log back in, and we'll take it all live. Congratulations!
Tim, thank you, guys.
We look forward to hearing about it. Thank you, Sean. All right. Let's do a little bit. Joy is our front runner, so let's bring Joy in, and maybe it's as simple as that. Joy, unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are.
Hello, Joy.
Hello.
Joy, remind people who don't know where you are.
I'm in Illinois.
Yeah, and tell us in a sentence or two your qualifications to guest host for Sean.
Well, first I like to say I'm excited and I'm nervous, but 2 things can be true at once, like Sean likes to say.
And Sean's nervous every episode, so don't worry.
Yeah, okay, great. My qualifications are basically I'm a mom who's just constantly on all of the wires, as you'd say. That's not totally true, but I am constantly checking all of the news, and I'm very interested in it. And then several times while I'm listening to the morning reading, which I log on almost every day, I want to like jump in and just make a random comment here and there. So that's why I want to be on. I am not near as knowledgeable as any of you, but
which means you're better.
Joy, I find it hard to believe anybody's going to beat you, but I'm going to bring in one or two more people, see if they can top it, but don't go anywhere because you are a front runner.
You did great.
You did great, and you will do great if you earn this role. Matt, nothing against Joy, of course, but tell us about your qualifications to fill in for Sean.
I'm not nearly as qualified as Joy. She brings an energy and a spirit that is great, so I'm happy to defer to her. I'm a father of two. I live in Pennsylvania. I probably am one of the few people who's seen every single morning meeting show. And I think it's possible, Mark, unless you watch the ones or the times you weren't on, I may have seen more than you have.
Matt, that's impressive. That's impressive. All right. Is your hand up because you want to co-host? Yes. All right. Deborah, tell everybody about your qualifications to fill in.
Hey, unmuting myself. Yeah, I haven't watched every single show, but I pretty much live around the 2A. I've met Dan and I've seen his blog. So I think that counts. I went to the table 17 and I love you guys.
All right. These are three very strong candidates. And I have to say, if we did a national plebiscite or further discussion, it would only become more complicated. So I'm exercising my prerogative here and saying, Matt and Deborah, excellent. Joy was first up, and we're just going to go with the incumbent. So we're very grateful to you both for participating and stay, maybe ask questions. But Joy, just as Sean would say, we can't understate how important it is to be first. So Joy, thank you for joining in.
Thank you.
Now we proceed back. Normal process. Joy, take a deep breath. You're doing great.
You're going to be awesome.
Everybody's rooting for you. It's going to be fun. All right. Next topic up, without any loss of momentum. 2028, Ruben Ggo. He's doing a town hall in Pennsylvania. In the absence of any obvious front runner, he's being discussed now as someone veteran from a battleground state. Obviously appeals to the Hispanic community. Dirty little secret. He's as liberal as Bernie Sanders on a ton of issues, and amazing that he got elected statewide in Arizona. Easily the most liberal person to get elected statewide in Arizona in forever. So the question is, how do you rate Ruben Gallego's chances of being the Democratic nominee for president in 2028? Dan?
They're not high. I mean, as you say, he did one of the most extreme makeovers of any candidate in a 2-year period ever when he got ready to run for the Senate this past cycle. And I think had the good fortune, and this happens in politics, it's not his fault, that his opponent was fairly poor, to be charitable. And so, even with a really poor candidate, he squeaked out a victory. But I have trouble. After Kamala Harris had such a U-turn on so many positions, I have trouble seeing putting up another candidate who has who made a lot of U-turns on positions. I don't think people know as much about his background. There's a lot of things that I think he would have to explain and probably would lose a little altitude over. But never say never. Crazier things have happened, but I would not put him in the top tier.
Joy, where do you put Gallego?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Dan in the sense of, I think the last election really showed that anybody who is extremely liberal probably doesn't have a super great chance because of just where the country is right now. And also, I think that Carrie Lake was a pretty extreme right as much as I can tell. So it almost was like putting the two extreme sides together. And so I think the fact that he just squeaked it out over that would give him pause.
All right. Before we move on, Dan, you first, and maybe Joy can just hear your answer and agree or disagree. Who would you say has the exact same chance of being the Democratic nominee as Ruben Gallego? Who would you say has the exact same chance?
99% of the members of Congress have the same chance.
Wow.
Which is to say,
okay, but so name a specific person. Like
I mean, look,
let's say Kirsten Sinema.
Oh, I think she would have a
greater being the nominee, not elected president.
Being the nominee. Yeah. I think Kirsten would have a better chance because there's a lane for her to occupy that when you get out in the rest of the country is going. I mean, look, she would have a case to make along with the Josh Shapiros of the world of where she stood up to her own party and where she did what was right.
All right,
and that has been a fairly winning lane in our party.
All right, Joy, let me ask you it this way. Who has a better chance of being the Democratic nominee in 2028? Mark Kelly or Ruben Gallego? The two Arizona senators.
100% Mark Kelly.
100% Mark Kelly.
He's an astronaut.
All right.
I don't know how to beat that.
All right, Joy. The president over the weekend, when asked about the MAGA movement, touted two people, Marco Rubio and the Vice President Vance, as being potential nominees in 2028. Who's left off that list do you think is pissed today?
Oh my. Sorry, I thought you were going to ask me like, what do you think of that combo? And I was ready to answer that.
Who's left off?
Who's left off?
Who should on the merits should be included?
On the merits should be included.
Or do you think those two guys are just head and shoulders above?
Honestly, I think they're head and shoulders above the rest. I mean, Rubio is showing such leadership at the moment, obviously. And I love Rubio, so I could be biased, but I feel like he's just showing such strength and be able to handle several different things at once. I mean, I, in one sense, feel like he's getting a practice run for being president. I kind of started to think that maybe I want Rubio to be the front runner, Vance to be vice president, but I don't know if he'd want to do that anyway. So I really like that ticket. I think Vance can destroy just about anybody on a debate stage, and I feel like that combo really gives a sense of. Honestly, I feel comforted by that duo. So,
Dan, thank you, Joy. Dan, I'm going to ask you kind of a super meta question. Let's say the president said to you, when I get asked about 2028, I want to name three people, and I want the third one to be not necessarily the most likely third nominee, or even the one who Trump wants third most likely, but just to serve like the macro purposes of Donald Trump and the party. Who should he have named if he was going to name a third one? Who should it have been for those purposes, just to like do whatever bidding giving the names does?
I would say Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And the reason is she's really good on TV. She's a governor from the middle of the country. She knows him. She's a great kind of attack dog on television. Like she does it with the smiles. She was a good press secretary. I think the two, she and Senator Cotton, two Arkansanians, I'm not sure what the right phrase of that is.
Arkansans.
Arkansans, probably. But I mean, having three white guys who are all the same age probably is not quite the best look. So I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders would be my vote.
Or Tulsi, maybe.
Or Tulsi. That's good. That's good. All right. I never read the chat. I glance at it. Joy, I have to glance. People are loving you. So you can just relax and you're home free. Okay. We're going to do one more topic. If you want to get a question in, please raise your hand. And as always, peace, love, and understanding, yada, yada, yada. No junk in the chat, smack in the chat, yada, yada, yada. And extend the presumption of grace to all, but especially to Joy, who's proving that the jobs Dan, Sean, and I do, not that difficult. You can walk in off the street and do them.
That's not true.
Just super well.
Very hard.
All right. Last Friday, you're doing great. Last Friday, Congressman Lawler was sitting in for Sean, and he did great too. And then he decided, unlike most House Republicans, particularly ones who live in competitive districts, and he lives in one of the most competitive districts in the country, to have a town hall. Here's a little bit of how that went.
Guys, he's talking. Guys, I'm allowing him to say, but. Listen to them, but I very much appreciate you participating and look forward. I'm sure I'll see many of you at the next one in Putnam County. So have a good night.
Have a good night. Joy, we've seen similar disruptions at other Republican town halls, and some Republicans claim this is all, George Soros funded fakery, but what's your analysis of the what is that manifesting? Why are the town halls like that? Or who's angry? What are they angry about?
Well, I think that's the interesting thing is I feel like nobody can really tell. People just seem angry in general. But my first thought was is this AstroTurf or is it real? Because if it's real, then that's one thing. I think then you can say that the temperature against the GOP is like really hot in a bad way. But if it's fake, then it just feels like kind of pointless. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder, like, are the town halls pointless? Because now they just seem to do videos of people really angry, not really asking for anything or asking to change any specific thing, unless I'm missing some video clips.
Right. So America, meet me at camera one. Listen, it's wrong for people to assume it's not AstroTurf, because it could be. And reporters who just cover this stuff and say, of course it's genuine, wrong. But you know what else is wrong? Assuming that it is AstroTurf, because you don't know. Those of you who are putting in the chat, it's AstroTurf. You literally don't know any better, ironically, than the people you're criticizing for saying it's not AstroTurf. I wish we knew. It's very hard. You'd have to go to these town halls. You'd have to run the people down. You'd have to cross-examine them. You'd have to do a lot of research on who they were. Very difficult thing to do. But I'll say again, and I'll direct this more to MAGA, okay? I agree with you. The press shouldn't cover these as if they're not AstroTurf. But please recognize the irony. You don't know that they are. I thought originally that they were. Now I'm beginning to think maybe they're not. But I'm just speculating based on years of watching town halls. But you don't know they're AstroTurf. And not only are you polluting the public discourse by saying something that you don't know the answer to, but you may be setting yourself up for a blue tsunami in 2026, because this may be the beginning of a inverse Tea Party type reaction. So you're putting your head in the sand by saying of course, they're AstroTurf. Dan, what say you?
Well, I think Joy said it very well. We don't know, as did you. I also think it's worth kind of understanding there are different degrees of AstroTurf. Having put town halls together, you know, there can be like the organized out of Washington, D.C. This is all, you know, kind of one master plan, let's say the DCCC or labor or whatever. Then it can be a member of Congress put something out and local opposition, people who are just energized, say, hey, look, so-and-so's having a town hall. Let's go. Let's press on A, B, C, or D issue. Nothing out of Washington, no state party kind of master plan. But all of it still, you have to get people to agree to go. You have to get people that, you know, are willing to stand up. They're not being paid. 90% of the time, they're not being paid. I'm sure there's an instance or two where people have. But I would not discount the fact that it is pretty apparent, both in qualitative, quantitative data, Democrats are fired up. There really is a lot of energy. Now, it's outrage, and you can say, like, that's terrible, and they're hyperventilating when they shouldn't. But today, and there's a long way to go, our party is pretty darn fired up, and that is good. It's a good start.
I will say, yes, I think Mark is right. If there is a blue wave coming, I do think the Republican Party needs to really take a look at any signs, like any vital signs, and say, okay, poll numbers are bad for the Democrats, but they're also getting worse for Republicans, just so that we don't have another situation in midterms where we're like taken off guard.
Well, by the way, you don't see Republicans. They know the same town hall is coming. Where's the base showing up to like counter program, to cheer and boo them and shout them down? Like, you don't see it.
Yeah. Joy, brilliant participation. Thank you. And Dan's gave a two-part answer. The second part was about how the Democrats are fired up. Dan's first part analyzing the gradations of AstroTurf. One of the reasons I love the show, so proud of it. You won't. I've never heard that laid out that way in my whole career. In reading about town halls and protests, etc. So brilliant. We'll clip that. We'll put that on the interweb, because he's absolutely right. There's different gradations of AstroTurf, and of course there's nothing wrong with any of it. And as he said, even the most manipulated, the thickest AstroTurf, George Soros gets on his phone to his henchmen and says, I want 19 people at the Lawler town hall, and I will write checks to all of them. Even executing that, not that easy. You know, you still got to get people to go. All right, time for your questions. Hammer Joy, don't hold back. Ask her like, what's the GDP projection for 2038? Anything you want. And we're going to go to Mr. Wheeler, Curtis Wheeler. Welcome in. Thank you for joining. Question after you tell folks where you are for Dan and Joy, and thank you for being part of Two Way.
Oh, and he's Army, and Sean's not here at Navy.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I'm a 3-time Trump supporter. didn't vote in 2020 because I have health issues with my parents, and I live in South Carolina, so I wasn't concerned about really getting in there. But and I'm in North Augusta, South Carolina, which is by Augusta, Georgia, and it is it annexed Belvedere, South Carolina, which is the Watergate guard, where he's from. Just
Yes,
to
sir.
give a little reference.
Okay,
But
that's good.
I look at all this from a spiritual. You may see the cross in the back. That's the only way I could deal with it, because to me, on a grown adult that looks at a child, whatever sex they are, and say, yeah, let's change this child's sex. A grown adult says that, to me, that's the only way I can deal with it, is spiritual. Now, there's a lot of good people on both sides. Democrat side, good people, spiritual, they're not mean. And I look at Adam and Eve, they wasn't bad people, but they got deceived. So that's also that's the only way I can deal with it. A grown adult says, yeah, bring a child to watch a drag queen. To me, that's I'm just saying that's the only way I could deal with it.
All right, Curtis. Curtis, I appreciate that. Do you have a question, or you want us to just comment on what you said?
No, the question I have is about being a black supporter for Trump, and that MAGA and the Republican Party, I think sometimes they don't recognize that the pain that blacks still have. I don't know if y'all can speak to that because you're not black, but I'm still a supporter, and I still can listen to Charlie Kirk, and some things he say might make me cringe, but having experienced some of that discrimination, because I'm 66 and my children probably haven't experienced what I experienced. So there's still a generation that feels pain. Like O.J. Simpson, I knew he was guilty to me, but I still was rooting for him to get. I cried when they said not guilty. So I don't think really recognize. When I look at the Democrats, I don't agree with them, but I still could recognize. Yeah, I can feel some of the pain. So I don't think MAGA and the Republican Party sometimes acknowledge that.
Yep. All right. Great topic, Curtis. Thank you for that. Dan, what about Curtis's view on the Republican Party, even as they're increasing their appeal to black voters?
Yeah, I mean, it's always you always want to understand your voters, and you want to try to understand what their what motivates them, you know, why they feel a certain way. And I think, Curtis, you saying that while you're a Trump supporter and you are inclined to be a member of MAGA, there are things that make you cringe. Those are things that as Democrats, we should have our ears open to. You know, is there a way to make you feel more comfortable voting for us, to give you a reason to be with us? And vice versa. When you're pulling in new voters, you need to be sensitive, because new voters are the most likely to leave a party. Entrenched voters are much harder to pull away.
Joy.
Yeah, so I think my answer, and of course I'm not in your shoes, but I would say, I think keep raising your voice, because if you are in MAGA, I think they should know how you feel. And so raising your voice, I think, is probably the biggest way to say, hey, we still don't feel seen and heard. And I think you said you were a 3-time Trump voter, so this might not apply, but I know there's a lot of black voters who came over from the Democratic Party in this election. And I think we don't want to, I don't speak for the Republican Party, but I would imagine they don't want to lose those voters. And so they probably want to really know how you think and feel. So keep raising your voice and expressing those concerns.
Brilliant, Joy. Curtis, thank you for joining. Grateful to you. All right, Joseph, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind.
Thanks for having me on. I'm actually from New York, but I'm in Rome right now.
Rome, New York, or Rome, Italy?
Rome, Italy.
I recommend the pasta, insider tip.
Just had some for lunch.
Okay, good. Welcome in, sir. Are you on holiday?
I am just here for a couple of days. I took a cruise across the Atlantic.
Great. Well, thank you for making time to join us.
I'm glad to be here. I just want to make a couple of comments. One is I appreciate the show. I think you're brilliant. I like to say you didn't invent political discourse. You just perfected it. So
It's going right in the promo reel. So thank you for that.
one.
Kind of like Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile; he perfected it.
Very,
Anyway,
very kind of, and Joy, of course, is doing nothing but perfecting the perfection.
Very good fill in for Sean.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's your first comment.
Second comment is just about the interview with, I think it was on CNN, with the cartel member. Was that over the weekend?
Which kind of cartel?
Well, interviewed and wanted to know what their take on President Trump was.
A drug cartel member?
Yes. Did you see it?
It was like it was on the front page. I want to say CNN, but I can't remember which.
I did not see that. What show? Do you know what show that was on?
Like I said, I'm on holidays, so I didn't catch it. It just seems to me that they are doubling down, CNN and the mainstream media, and I think it speaks to your doubling down on Trump and I don't want to call it derangement syndrome, but stories that are going to rev up their base, their viewership.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to what you were talking about with the
I missed the interview, but I'm told by my colleague Noah that CNN is taking a lot of heat for doing a pretty sympathetic interview with a drug cartel member. I said this the other day when I don't watch very much cable news, but I watched a little bit of CNN in primetime because I wanted to see Scott Jennings, and I'm amazed at how anti-Trump they are. I thought the whole post-election thing, they were trying to like go to the center and not be anti-Trump, but I'm just amazed.
I think my observation is that I think they're trying to build back their audience, sort of one story at a time, and hoping that it will come back the way it was.
To a resistance audience, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you showed that town hall, and I think that there might be some credence to that.
Yeah. Joy, do you watch enough? Thank you, Joseph. Joy, do you watch enough CNN to have a point of view on this?
I don't watch CNN. I do check CNN online mostly I don't know if every day, but anyway, I just think it's kind of ridiculous. I feel like the election was as much an indictment against the media as it was against the Democratic Party. I mean, that was partly why I voted the way I did. And I just feel like they just won't learn. Like they just don't get that they just won't learn. I guess that's all I have to say about that. It's just kind of infuriating. Dan.
Joseph, I had not heard about this. I'm seeing the same kind of chatter here on both on our chat and from some members of our team. I don't know what the motivation is for that. I don't think many Americans I would think and hope to some extent most CNN viewers would not really be as concerned with what a drug cartel member thinks of our elected officials, Trump or anybody else. I mean, so that is baffling. I guess they're in the news, and that maybe, the old no news is bad news theory. CNN thinks they're being talked about, but that is about as cringe inducing as I've heard.
Yeah. I agree. Joseph, grateful to you for joining. How'd you find out about two-way?
I picked up your newsletter whenever that started. I don't know, a few years ago. And so I've been following you pretty much since then.
Okay. Well, grateful to you for joining in. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. On this day when Israelis are dealing with the fallout of the airport strike, and the Israeli government now says they're going to take control of all of Gaza, proper to ask Haley to come in. Haley, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Would love to have your take on what's going on in Israel today, and then whatever is on your mind for our experts, Joy and Dan.
Well, guys, you broke the news to me this morning, so kind of outraged. Not going to say that I'm happy with anything that the government decided to do to Gaza. I don't think Israel should be staying in Gaza. I can't believe that those words are even coming out of that it's even happening. I will say that when the missile hit the airport, I know people who were at the airport at the moment, and it was really scary. It didn't look like a normal missile, just like when it, shrapnel hits and things like that. So it was definitely what I could see was an escalation. I think it's a mess, and I think it's a mess that should have ended a very, very long time ago. Especially since I don't know if anybody saw Benjamin Netanyahu saying this weekend that basically the number one reason for this war is not to bring back the hostages, it's to defeat Hamas, which I think 75% of Israelis have a problem with. Most of them want the hostages back over any goal for the war. But my question to you guys is like kind of on the same lines, like what can America do now? Now that 10,000 reservists are being called up again. I mean, it looks like we're going into another huge war. What power does America have in this situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as I've said, for me, America's role in the world has been defined for some time as where's the leverage over Putin? Where's the leverage over Xi? Where's the leverage over Netanyahu? And I'm not equating Netanyahu to the other two, but it's the same dynamic regarding America trying to deal with Asia and Europe and the Middle East, which is where's the leverage to get a foreign leader to do what the American president wants. Joy, thoughts on Israel and the U.S.?
Oh my goodness, you guys really did pick some intense topics for the co-host day. Gosh, I don't know. I feel like there's not an easy answer to any of it.
Joy, substitute hosts get 2 passes.
Oh, wonderful.
You can exercise your pass if you want.
You're doing a great job, Joy.
Thank you. Yeah. I might want to pass, but I actually do have one question maybe for both of you, and that is, I thought that Trump and Netanyahu did a press conference saying, Trump Gaza was happening and we're both going to be making Gaza better. So what happened to that?
Dan, answer both Haley and Joy, please.
First off, Joy, I think your uncertainty and your being a little flummoxed, you literally reflect, I think, most Americans, which is there's immense frustration. Netanyahu has tormented presidents of both parties for 30 years in the sense that we don't have as much control over him. The one thing that he needs from us is weaponry and logistics. When Joe Biden kind of flirted with delaying or withholding, people went crazy saying like you can't, or certain segments of the American population went crazy saying, how dare you do this? But I really wonder where Donald Trump is on this, because we all keep saying he wants peace. He doesn't want more people to die. He talks about the 4,000 or, Ukrainian and Russian young men dying every day. Here we are, Haley, to your point, Netanyahu's calling up reservists. There's been no real progress. Now this is about eliminating Hamas, which is a way more difficult thing to do, right? Makes me think of the Godfather analogy when the mom's pleading for little Vito to be saved and the Don says, when he's older, he's going to seek revenge, right? How do you eliminate Hamas when it's pretty ingrained in that part of the world? Mark, how do you think, Trump would view this now? He's got cross currents of his own politics to play here.
Right. Well, I would say it like this. Bibi loves the vacuum and Trump understands the vacuum, right? They had that press conference. There's all this stuff that's been tossed out. You don't see talk of Egyptian troops or Saudi troops, right? Forces. There's no one stepping in to say, we're going to make Gaza peaceful. We're going to put Gaza under control. We're going to end the humanitarian crisis, ensure Israel's security, and point towards some future. There's no one doing that. And so I think in the absence of that, and with Trump proposal is afloat, Trump's not ready to start doing anything. Witkoff has said this would take, like a decade, I think he said. I think Bibi's just filling the vacuum. And because the world's distracted by tariffs, the world's distracted by Ukraine and Russia, the outcry is pretty minimal. I mean, it's kind of incredible that the Israeli, maybe by the end of the day, there'll be a reaction. But the Israeli government says we're gonna bring more people into the military and we're gonna go fully control Gaza. So far, I've seen very limited reaction, and I think Trump sees the vacuum, and maybe he's got private assurances from Bibi that this will happen in a way that will respect human rights, that will put a premium on humanitarian aid. Maybe, possible. Don't shake your head at me, Haley. It's possible. I hope.
And Mark, don't forget he's going to the Middle East in I think a couple weeks for this summit apparently in Dubai.
Yeah,
that's an interesting timing.
Yeah, it is. It is. And baby Bibi's trying to get ahead of that.
Just from an Israeli point of view, this is just such a no-win situation for anybody. I just don't even understand how this could even be on the table. I don't understand it.
Well, here's a man who knows the answer. Yakov, welcome in from Brooklyn, Brooklyn, USA.
Brooklyn, New York, baby.
Welcome in, sir.
Thank you. I don't understand why and how Americans cannot forget September 11th. Like we were fighting evil, that there's evil and there's good. You know, just this past October, they foiled a terrorist attack 2 blocks away from me. A guy was going to come and blow up our synagogue and do another 10/7. Like, where do we lose our moral compass to not fight against it, to not demolish evil? And we can't defeat Hamas. Yes, we could defeat Hamas. They're calling up 60,000 reservists. They're going to go in probably after the summit, that when Trump goes to the Middle East. And if you talk about human aid, the whole human aid that was going into Gaza goes to Hamas, and that funds Hamas. So, like, why doesn't anybody call out the UN for not working with Israel to give human aid to Gazans directly without Hamas?
These are fair questions. Dan.
I mean, look, you speak for tens of millions. I mean, and this has been one of the great questions, which is, what is the U.S. appetite for continued support of overseas conflicts? We hear, I'm often in the minority talking about Ukraine. There are questions about to what extent we really are willing to defend Taiwan. And you have heard, this goes back to, Joe Biden, should we be sending arms, and are Americans willing to pay to either put a hotel and a resort, along the sea, as they were talking about a month ago, or to provide weaponry and potentially be partners in a broader Middle Eastern conflict? This has tormented presidents since Jimmy Carter. I don't know the answer to that. And I suspect it's not black and white for Donald Trump.
Okay. Haley and Yakov, thank you both. Grateful to you for participating. Let's get one more quick question in.
And by the way, Mark, can I just add, one of the times since Trump came in that I've seen MAGA most divided, okay, was when he talked about the idea of building the resorts in, I think it was the West Bank, right? Whatever he called it, Mar-a-Lago by the sea or whatever. I think if he wants to divide MAGA, if he were to go in and say, like, baby, we are all in with you, I think his own party may start to come apart.
I was just going to say that I feel like this is kind of the dividing factor, honestly, in both parties. I feel like with the Democratic Party, you have like pro-Hamas protesters, and then you kind of have, I always remember the Democratic Party being very pro-Jewish. And you kind of have that. And then I think Dan's right. You have a faction of the Republican Party that's kind of like how we used to be, where it's like, yes, let's always help defend Israel, or let Israel defend itself, I should say. And then the MAGA, where it's like, no, we don't want to be involved at all. So it feels like this gradient of like, in both parties, this is like the hot potato no one really wants to hold.
I'm seeing it in the chat right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Jane, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind for Joy and Dan.
Hi, I'm in Georgia, and 2 quick things. So it's so interesting you were talking about CNN. Mark, started listening to you from Smerconish, and I always did the Smerconish. I listened to everything, right? CNN is just so much more, and I don't know, Trump derangement syndrome, anti-Trump. I mean, I only watch it now when Scott Jennings on, honestly. That was one thing. And then the other thing about, and y'all haven't mentioned this yet, about, sorry, I'm nervous for some reason.
You're doing great.
Jane, you're great.
About this ruling with the NPR and PBS lawsuit. And it's interesting. I was thinking back because during the election coverage, for some reason, I was watching PBS election coverage. Did y'all watch that?
No, not a minute.
Because the 7 people that were on there, 2 of them were Jonathan Capehart, David Brooks. I mean, there was one Republican. Everyone else, it was so pro-Harris, pro-Harris. It was just really interesting. So I mean, down the middle. It's just not true.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as they make the argument for their survival. Sometimes they say, there are a lot of red areas and rural areas where that's, amongst the only news sources of news. and that they're not biased. And the first argument, there's some truth to it. The second argument, they can't make the case they're not biased, and it's apparent to so many, and yet they're out there saying like this is a case of mistaken identity. It's very confusing to me that they would be so determined to survive and yet not face the truth. Dan.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is one of those where Trump won. Trump wants to move in a different direction. I don't know how many people still get their news from either of those sources. Like, look, there's nothing in stone that these cultural institutions, one, should exist, supported either solely or in part by the federal government, and two, that the content that they produce is extremely progressive, right? I mean, they just do. And so while it may make me happy, I understand that a conservative is one, a conservative has different points of view, and they're going to reorient this. And that is his, or someday her, right to do.
Yeah.
And
Joy.
I mean, I know.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Jane, and then Joy.
Just really quick. And then I know they'll bring out Mr. Rogers' talk. Remember when he went to get to say, and which was true. And I love Mr. Rogers, but sadly, it's not about Mr. Rogers anymore. And that's sad.
Yeah. Joy?
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I've been logging on to certain news sites. I think I want to say, I don't know if PBS is one of them. I shouldn't say that if I don't know. But anyway, and they've got these pop-ups like, journalism is under attack, like by the Trump administration. And I just want to be like, didn't Biden revoke like several press credentials in his own way? Like the double standard to me is infuriating. It makes me, whenever the media wants to tell me about a big fire that's happening over here, I just kind of want to ignore it because I'm like, yeah, but you ignored this blazing inferno over here for 4 years. Like it's kind of the boy who cried wolf syndrome. And I think why I actually really love the two-way platform, I didn't really mean to plug it here, but I will, is because it feels like you guys are passionate about truth. And I think the American people, we just want the truth. We don't want all the spin and we don't want all the bias. And so when a pop-up comes up and says, hey, support NPR, we're getting, attacked. I'm like, no, you guys have been kind of not attacking, but you have not been truthful with the American people for so long. And no, I'm not going to support you. And I actually don't think the government should support, places like PBS because they are so hostile to certain administrations. And if they were fair to both, then I'd be like, sure, okay, great. But they're not. And it's just so blatantly obvious. It's like the emperor wearing no clothes syndrome. And I feel like everyone can see it except for them. And it's just infuriating every time they talk about it and like feign like we're getting, persecuted. So anyway, I'm not saying it's not hard to be any kind of reporter. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this like fake outrage is becoming kind of ridiculous. So
Jane, thank you for joining. Speaking of fidelity, fierce determination, fidelity to the truth, here's Two Way's Meghan McCain. Joy, how easy is it to host on Two Way, Joy?
It's actually hard.
Yeah.
But it is really fun. It's really fun. I should say that.
So Meghan is one of our stars and one of the people who believes in Two Way, and we couldn't be happier to have her as part of our programming. And this week, making a couple changes. Meghan, explain both the changes and the reason for the changes, and thank you for joining.
Joy, you're doing such a good job.
Thank you, Meghan.
No one who gets paid to talk ever can say anything about what real Americans are doing because getting paid to talk, not really a real job. Like sort of. I always feel like it's like a con I pulled that I can get people to pay me to talk. Sorry, Mark and Dan and Joy. Anyway, I have a podcast called Citizen McCain, and we are merging the podcast and my two-way show together, and we're calling it Citizen McCain. And we are moving it to noon on Mondays and Wednesdays and possibly Fridays. We're discussing that now, and people can join live if you're on your lunch break. And this is East Coast time. And if not, you can watch it later or stream it later. And we're very excited. Nothing's changing when it comes to content. And we're still going to have a mix of pop culture and politics. We have some funny stuff about Prince Harry for the episode today, which is nothing you would ever discuss on the morning meeting. It's a little too lowbrow, and we're excited. We're having so much fun. It's like such a fun platform to do, and I love interacting with people, and it's a great gig. I'm really, really excited, and thank you everyone at Two Way for being so supportive and helping us, move into this. But everybody was just Follow us on TikTok. We have a huge following on TikTok. Very grateful to the TikTok community. And it was too confusing to try and switch everything over with the name. So
right. So as I said in my Substack this morning, new time, noon Eastern, Mondays, Wednesdays, and maybe Fridays. New name, Citizen McCain, although again, as Megan said, name for a podcast, but same great host. And and say again, we can put the graphic up. Megan's show, some of you have sampled it and watch it regularly, some of you not yet. Please today, noon Eastern time. Megan, tell us about your guest, a comedy podcaster.
So Cena is a very old friend of mine. He's a comedian and he hosts a podcast called Fraudsters, which like delves deep into great frauds. He did a really good one on George Santos, and he actually did one on the drug trade and like America's war on drugs that has been an epic failure that I found really fascinating. And he's just a funny person, and we're very old friends, and we're just going to have him on to talk about. He's a lawyer too. Comes from a great family that wanted him to be a lawyer, and of course he became a comedian instead, but he knows a lot about the law. And we're going to talk about some of the immigration stuff that I'm very confused about, and when I'm confused, I just want people to explain things to me. And also, you guys were talking about Ruben Gallego earlier on in the show.
Yeah.
Anyone who's from Arizona, I know I technically live in Virginia, but I still feel like I'm full Arizona. There's a lot of juicy rumors about him that fly everywhere. If he ran for president, would come wide open, especially with his ex-wife, the mayor of Phoenix. So
correct. So
that's why I said personal history. I kept it very.
So again, Megan's show, you can join live on the Two-Way platform at noon. Go to twoway.tv to sign up to join live, to be able to participate live in the conversation Two-Way. And if you want to watch the show, you can watch it shortly after noon when it's on YouTube in full. So you can watch it on demand in full, Mondays and Wednesdays. Please, if you're watching this program and you've never watched Megan's program, at least try it out today. I bet you'll like it. Megan, we look forward to your new time period. Noon Eastern, Monday, Wednesdays, maybe Fridays, TB announced, and also the new name.
Just a few minutes. Dan and Mark, come on.
Okay, we'll come on anytime you want. Megan, thank you. We'll see you at noon, a couple hours. Go get ready. Joy, amazing debut. I can't say that you're guaranteed to be the regular substitute host for Sean, but at this point, you are remaining the front runner, and we're so grateful to you for participating and showing everybody both how great you are and how easy it is to host the show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Can I make one tiny plug?
Yeah.
I want the Senate confirmation hearings to be on the Two-Way platform, so the American people can ask the questions. I think there'd be better questions and less screaming. So that was my little plug.
All right, let me check with the parliamentarian, see if that's legal.
Happen.
Thank you, Joy. So grateful to you for making time. In 30 minutes, I will be on America's Newsroom with my friends Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino, if you'd like to watch that. And then tonight at 6 o'clock, I'll be here on Two-Way tonight with highlights from the Jill Biden speech and the Scott Bessent speech and all the day's news. And then my guest this week on Next Up, my new video podcast on the Megyn Kelly Network, Rand Paul tomorrow, and the Secretary of Veterans Department, Mr. Collins, on Thursday. And there'll be other folks on as well, but those are amongst the folks we'll be on. And we'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Dan, did you want to say something?
And Mark, where is your show ranked now? I've heard rumors.
Well, it was the number 2 on Apple Podcasts. Was number 2 amongst all news shows, and it was number 8 overall. But those rankings, are, I don't quite get them. And we're doing quite well, but we need to do better. So again, if you've not liked, subscribe, download, listen to, watch, whatever, Next Up, please go to your favorite place to listen to podcasts or go to the YouTube channel, and please become part of it, because Dan, we want the numbers to go higher, not lower.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will say, as a Democrat, I learned stuff from your interview with Gavin Newsom.
Thank you. I'm very, very pleased with how that went. He was a very good guest. Thank you all for watching. Again, very grateful to Joy. Sean should be back tomorrow, unless Dan and I have a meeting and decide Joyce maybe would figure something out. But very grateful to you for watching. I'll see you in half an hour on the Fox News Channel and at 6 o'clock tonight. Have a great day.